Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions 4 p.m. BST on a Wednesday afternoon. Dr. Yev is back in the building, or in his building at least. Anyway, how you doing, Yev?
Doing good. How you doing, Danny?
Good, good. We're going to talk about Facebook ads today. We're going to talk a little bit about Google ads, and we'll pick up on Geo Rank as well towards the end of the show. I'm just going to share to the groups. Do you want to give the audience a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, I started being really deep and day-to-day running Facebook ads, Google ads, all kinds of advertising for one brand that was on Amazon on their own website and in retail. So that was my experience before realizing that attribution is a big problem. So then coming up with software to track better, to amplify Amazon, and then that led to Zon Tracker, where now I've seen it's hundreds of millions of dollars of Facebook ad spend, and then getting more into Google ads across just hundreds of advanced brands and more beginner brands, but really seeing the differences between what beginners are doing, advanced brands, and then different types of advanced brands. So my intro is coming in from a very data-driven perspective, how you can optimize anything you're doing off Amazon, but particularly trying to amplify Amazon with all of that information.
Yeah. So do you want to, should we start to dig in on the Facebook side? We've seen a lot of changes with Messenger. We covered that a little while ago on the show. If you go to sellersessions.com and do a search for the potency, I think, of chatbots still, I think we had Paul Harvey and Anthony Lee and a couple of other guys, can't remember just now. So go back there. But what on the other side of Facebook ads themselves, rather than talking about integration and Messenger, what's some of the data that you're seeing?
Yeah, we'll start off with some of the good news for Amazon sellers. And if you have an Amazon brand and you want to advertise off Amazon, and there's so much stuff happening on Facebook right now in terms of changes, whether it's with the iOS or just how attribution is changing, is that it's making it really hard for all of the normal Facebook advertisers, meaning that everybody else that's advertising on Facebook. So this makes the playing field a little bit level, like more equal for Amazon sellers, because Amazon sellers are always dealing with attribution issues and how to leverage Facebook. So right now, everyone is like all over the place, while Facebook and Apple are playing chess with each other, or while like all of these things happening with just what Facebook is trying to do to make sure that like they're just not getting broken down, or that the software is working. And then they're always trying to release features. For example, there's in Facebook groups, there's like all of these beta features that you start seeing that they're rolling out. So it's like in different Facebook groups that I'm in, that as an administrator you see but it's over like 100,000 people type of groups, that there's like new features Facebook rolling out, essentially to give more ad inventory to advertisers. So Facebook is doing things to balance it out. But the good news right now, and it may be for like a few more months, while everything is all over the place for normal Facebook advertising, is the perfect time for you to advertise, because the other advertisers don't have as much advantage over you because their tracking is all over the place. So you're kind of coming into like your normal world anyway, where you're just running Facebook ads and trying to amplify Amazon, but your costs are actually like better than before, because the other advertisers aren't scaling their ads as much, at least most of them. Some are, of course. So that's kind of like the good news for Amazon advertisers, that right now is like the perfect time to start. And now we'll get into like all the bad news, all of the stuff that's happening, and all of the changes on the Facebook side. So, some of the main ones is that there's all of this stuff happening with iOS and attribution issues. Just the short of it is that
privacy, isn't it? Because Tim Cook's kicking off about some stuff. You see the headlines, clickbait headlines saying Facebook is over. Obviously, that's not true, but that's going to have some impact on them in terms of what changes Apple made, right?
Yeah, and just overall looking at the data, there's a lot of Facebook advertisers that they're doing even better now than before. And before, I'm talking about like specifically looking at January 2021 data. So some brands that I've been in contact with more, or just kind of just talking with their marketer teams or their CMO, just like what they've been doing compared to what they've been doing like last year, where they're performing even better. So whatever's happening, they're like, yeah, we'll take it. And it's just like normal products, whether it's in like health or like, nothing, some crazy product that's a rarity. So for some brands, things are better because it's like more influx for everybody else. But it's things related to privacy, where essentially Facebook is able to track less like their data, they just don't have as much data, or they aren't able to use the data quicker. So the way Facebook is counteracting that is with their own algorithms, where they just have so much data, they just have to figure out how to position the data to the advertiser. So in a way, all of the changes that Apple is making, or that other browsers or marketplaces are making, Facebook always has ways to try to counteract that. And then as an advertiser, you just use different strategies to counteract that. That's probably the number one takeaway before we get really in deep with a whole bunch of different strategies or tactics or what's happening. One takeaway is that you just change your advertising strategy, where you're not as relying on like the bottom of the funnel as much, where we have like the best tracking for purchases. Because if you're losing some of that data, you're just going back to being like an affiliate marketer, or more like direct response marketer, or marketers that are like focused more on the top of the funnel or middle of the funnel, like getting leads. Where like, yes, you're getting leads, so make that the most effective. And then you're using your on Amazon marketing with your off Amazon channels, where you're like, sending your emails, sending your traffic to Amazon, but you focused on the top of the funnel, which Amazon advertisers are usually doing anyway when they're using off Amazon. So in the worst case scenario, when Facebook continues like making the tracking like worse, attribution is worse, you're just switching your strategy. So that would be like,
so in terms of the attribution, what is some of the metrics that have been lost? So what's kind of cut back?
It's hard to
had impact to blind?
More about so some of the things like the attribution periods that you're looking at, the time frames, that they're either shorter. Facebook is telling you like, don't look at 28 days, because like, one, we're like taking that away. Yes, you can do ways to like all kinds of hacks and workarounds to get a 28-day back, but it's like, look at 7-day attribution, which for some brands that have intensive email marketing, 7 days is like almost nothing, because like a high percentage of your sales come in after. And like, of course, like 1 day is like, don't look at 1 day, like 7 days is really good. So it's the attribution period, which is vital for scaling your ads. When if your ROAS or like your ACOS, like I think now Amazon sellers are trying to think about ROAS a little bit more.
Yeah, DSP and everything else,
if you're like at 1.0 break even, not even considering COGS, where like if you're like way under, but a few days passes and your ROAS is over 1, like, oh, actually it's better than I thought. And then a few more days passes, and this past 7 days, you're like, oh, my ROAS is at 1.6. That's actually covering COGS as well. So now I can scale my ads even more. So even those few days, that attribution window is really vital, where you can spend from $100 per day on Facebook ads to $1,000 per day, or if you're already spending $5,000, trying to get to $10,000 per day ad spend and more. So that's one thing, that attribution window. The other part is the actual tracking, where I'm going to mention like the workaround, not the workaround, but the strategy that all sellers need to start using to essentially like compensate for this. And this is where like the actual tracking from like the user of what they're doing, like what Apple is trying to do, and other browsers, actually more like other like all kinds of like browsers and marketplaces are doing, is that trying to disconnect the user from their actions. That way, that's how you preserve privacy, right? Like somebody takes an action and later you actually don't know who did exactly what. So it's trying to separate those steps where you can know who did what, but it kind of becomes more at an aggregated level. So that's kind of like what some solutions are out there that like browsers are intentionally trying to like force like separating that data and then connecting it back together. But it doesn't look where like, Yev took this action and like bought this product or this software or this course or whatever. So it separates it out. So because that's happening, and it's all happening at like the browser level and like cookie level and things on your computer, just like how all of that tracking is happening. So essentially what you need to do as an advertiser is really dig down into like the customer-centric perspective, because that's how you're going to alter your marketing, meaning that when you're going to be doing your email marketing, or when you decide to send who to what Amazon listing. So let's say one advertising strategy for Amazon sellers is you're collecting the lead in some way, whether it's in ManyChat or on your own website. You're just collecting the email first, or contact information, like you're growing your list. And then after you get that, then you send them to Amazon. So as opposed to like directly to Amazon, like the other strategy. So when you're collecting information, you just have to know, you have to learn as much as you can about the potential customer of what they like, their preferences, their interests, their lifestyle. So then you send them into, you kind of like bucket them. So as opposed to like knowing exactly what one person did, because we're like losing that accuracy, like on the Facebook side and other platforms, you have to start bucketing people even more. That way, like this is a higher intent audience, this group compared to this one that likes, like this pet product or like this health product or this category of health product. So you're a little bit more fine of who you're sending where. So when you're doing that segmentation on your own end, you're essentially like digging down into that customer journey of exactly what steps they're taking and kind of thinking of more of a funnel approach. So you have to do that more as an advertiser where I know before, and this is still happening now, kind of like from my view as what advertisers are doing, Amazon sellers, they're just not like segmenting their campaigns out even more. And even though I've been talking about this part a lot more over like the past half a year, you just have to separate out your retarget and your warm audience from your cold audience. Amazon sellers like don't do that as much because it's more work and you have to have more creatives and more advertising strategy to implement that. But that solves the problem, because even when you lose all tracking, you still know that the actions that website visitors or that ad viewers take is going to be different from the cold audience compared to warmer audience. So kind of have to think of a customer-centric approach for that.
And what is that customer-centric approach? So in your mind, how would you structure that in terms of, you give us the overall strategy, but what would you do here to make those adjustments? So going back to your point, right? So when someone running their Facebook ads at scale and they're spending tens of thousands a day because they're working off of that, and then you start taking away certain areas of their attribution, that becomes a problem because they can't foresee what's happening down the road. So that's where they slash their budgets, right? And this is where it levels out the playing field. So from my experience as well, a lot of Amazon sellers have less success with Facebook. A lot of people try it, but if you look at the people that really nail it, I think you find it's kind of far and few between. It's different when sending to their own website and they're looking at long-term value of a customer and they sell products that give them the opportunity to their consumables, so they go back and buy once a month or so. But what are some of the adjustments a seller should be doing today with all of this uproar in mind?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll try to make it simple into two parts. You have to separate your advertising strategy, off Amazon advertising strategy, into two parts that you are actually optimizing, testing, and scaling. One is on the ad side, like on the Facebook side, on the platform side, and then two is on the more, not on the Amazon side, but on like your marketing side. So it's things that you control the Facebook algorithm. It's like creating like engaging content or whatever stops the scroll. So it's kind of like on that side. So when earlier asked, so what is that customer-centric approach? One, make sure your ads, like who you're targeting and the actual creatives, the videos or the images that are like unique or make people stop scrolling. Do two types. One is that essentially like colder audience to warmer audience. You have to start separating your audiences. Like this is the answer. This is what attribution software does. And when that attribution is harder, you have to do that through strategy. So separate out your audiences. Just psychologically think what audience is going to be totally cold compared to warmer. So if it's a health product, you just have to be generally in the niche of like someone that's thinking about health. And then your other types of ads that are like different category, it's going to be more specific. So like showing a product makes more sense in the second type of ad. In the first type of ad, showing a product like usually doesn't work, even though that's what Amazon sellers do. They just show a product in their first ad, which that's more of like a middle funnel type of thing. First, you have to show lifestyle. You have to get into the mindset of the person seeing the health product that's relevant to them. Not something like pet related or politics related or something. First is just like easy decision for them. Oh yeah, health, I'm interested in it. Or it's a big problem in my life. I need to read the headline now. And then the other types of ads are something that's for a warmer audience. So that's usually like testimonials, reviews, product related. That's like where you know it's a different type of ad. And now when you're looking at your metrics, this is going to be clear where the engagement, like if it's videos, like how long somebody's looking at the video or click-through rates, you're just going to notice those big differences between the colder audiences, the colder psychology, and the like warmer audience psychology. Those metrics are going to be obvious, where if you're not doing that, it's all blended, it's all one campaign.
Well, you can obviously you can segment by watch time and stuff before and retarget onto those audiences as well, can't you? So if you've got a video it's 30 seconds and they're above 3, above 6, I think, or 15, and then depending on how much data you gathered and viewing time that you got, you can then dial in a bit more. It starts to get a bit expensive, but it's it can work over a longer period of time.
Yeah, exactly. But this part that you said, for me, I'm considering as that like the other part of strategy. That's like not the ad, what you can control on the ad side.
Yeah.
So the ad side, you have to do in a way as a requirement to separate that data out. That's more about separating your customers out, like psychologically, so you know who's the right customer, who's not, and like the colder audience, separating them out. The other part, kind of like retargeting based on amount of views, that comes more into your strategy after you already have creatives that fit into separating the audiences out. And then when you have certain people are going to click into your destination, and that may be to Amazon, where you have a lot less control of what you're doing afterwards. It may be to your chatbot flow, or to a website or other areas. But essentially on that other step is then you're doing the same thing, but separating the audience there. Let's say you're sending people directly to Amazon. A lot of people are doing this. So from my perspective, or from the data that I see, a lot of beginners are doing this, and it's the harder to optimize. You just need way more data, way more ad spend. You need to spend like thousands and thousands of dollars before you find the creatives that work. Not the creatives to just get clicks, but the right psychology for someone to shop from Facebook to Amazon and shop. So this is where, when you're doing that, you lose the data on the other side. Like, yes, you can have workarounds with whether it's like using offline conversions, like using Zone Tracker. If you're not doing any of those, you can't really separate the data other than one step before. And this is custom conversions. So like on your website, if somebody clicks the Amazon button and they're going there, that's a custom conversion where somebody has the intent to take some action on Amazon. In your chatbot flows, somebody makes it like all the way to your flow, and then at the end, they're like clicking over to go to Amazon, like making that into a custom conversion. So you're separating your audience from like, all right, who is now a potentially warmer type of audience for Amazon. If you do the other strategies where you're like getting the Amazon purchase, feeding that data back to Amazon, then that's a hot audience. Then you want to focus on, like getting more purchases from them or doing lookalike audiences. That's getting into like the third level of advertising strategies. But before that, you just need to separate out the audiences as much as possible. And as long as you have that mentality, you're separating audiences at each stage in the ad, the creative, the targeting, and then what they're doing on your website or flow or in your email marketing. If you are collecting their email or SMS, like how you're separating audiences there. This will make you like safe from whatever happens in the attribution space, because then you're thinking like affiliate marketers just do this the best, because they're like, we don't have control of the platform. We just need to run like good ads, and it gets clickbaity really fast because they're all about like the algorithm of getting the highest, click-through rates. So you kind of have to be somewhere in the middle as the Amazon seller of having that perspective of separating audiences out.
Cool. Any more on Facebook before we shift over to AdWords?
Facebook. Well, there's a lot of stuff related to Facebook that's Google related. Let me talk about Google a little bit, and then it might bring back some ideas for Facebook as well. So for Google, I've mostly focused on Facebook. So Google is more about where seeing the problem. Same thing as on Facebook, where you have to attribute, track exactly what you're doing, and then optimizing on that data. So this is where just different features, and you start to have to getting into engineering or different tools. So we figured this out through Zone Tracker. You can see if like other tools are doing this, or like yourself or your own engineer, where essentially have to leverage the Google API. Essentially, what you're doing, and these are the different features, that you're just sending all of the data back to Google that you're gaining through your funnel. Some of that is actually on Amazon. So getting that purchase data back, like right now, Amazon Attribution, like the actual Amazon Attribution program, is improving a lot. Like a year ago, it was totally crap. Like right now, some people are saying like it's still like not just great. Some have figured it out. They just tested enough. They know like how to set it up so it's actually accurate. It's working. If you're combining Amazon attribution with other tools or other methods, you're kind of like plugging in the gaps of where attribution fails from like any tool. There's like advantage, disadvantage, either one. So when you're combining methods, you're able to do the best of Google AdWords. That's like not just seeing the data in like Amazon attribution or in a platform, but the main part is sending the data back into Google Ads. So like one, you see your Amazon purchase conversion data, the conversion and the value inside of Google Ads columns at the keyword level. So you're able to optimize at scale. It's not just like a hack where you just want to like get some ranking and only do for, you know, like just shotgun approach for just a couple of keywords. You can actually scale, decide is your strategy long tail keywords or whichever. And this isn't about like rebates or ranking. This is about like low discount. So it's not like a giveaway strategy. So it's getting Google data back and then being able to make ad decisions based on that. And then the other part is the actual Google Ads optimization, the algorithm where the conversion event, you just have to set that as a purchase for Google Ads to be most effective, which is the Amazon purchase. If you're in the lead generation space or kind of like before the approach where, you know, like I'm running Google Ads, the most I can do is like send people to my website, get an email, or like, you know, exchange for a coupon, and I can optimize for that conversion event. That was kind of like one of the best things before that we were able to do with Google Ads. Same thing with Facebook ads. It's just like optimizing for that middle funnel event. And then you kind of like scale from there. But going one step deeper, optimizing based on the actual Amazon purchase. So that's an update on the Google Ad side where this is just being able to send that data back into Google for seeing it in the column, optimizing for the data, but it's only in certain scenarios. So right now, Amazon attribution is improving where you're able to do that in more scenarios and through other methods, like basically the Google Ads APIs, softwares that have access to that allow you to like leverage that to send the data back. This is where you can now set up your funnels to do that. And this gets it to funnels that work actually similar between Facebook or other strategies in Google Ads.
Okay. Sorry, it sounded like a dry gap there. I just didn't know if he was moving on to the next thing. But let's go back to Geo Rank. For those that don't know, it's a protocol based on location in terms of where the shopper is. Is it the FBA center as well? Because obviously when we try and match up in terms of rankings, depending where you are in the country, you might in position 1 here, position 7 there, position 10, etc. So it comes down to a reference point of zip codes and stuff like that. You've talked a lot about Geo Ranking as well. I talk a lot to Garfield, who's in the group. He won't come on the podcast. I'm giving him a shout out. That guy is super knowledgeable when it comes to Geo Ranking as well. So what are some of the updates that you've been discovering at the moment with regards to that? Yeah,
it's that Amazon has been going like deeper and deeper into regional based factors, especially over the past, well, like now it's more like 8 months, but essentially everything pandemic related, there's like all of these things happening with like, you know, can Amazon fulfill all the orders? Do Amazon sellers have to start doing manual fulfillment? And that, and in a way, that's kind of like saving Amazon to have to like do less, or there's kind of like these stopgap periods. So there's these clear periods where there these shifts with what Amazon was either affecting regional algorithms or adding in more features that are regional based. And this is things like where the badges that you see are actually regional. So depending where the searcher is coming from, like the Amazon's like choice or like the Prime badge, like all of the different badges on a product listing are regional as well. So that was like one thing that happened, but this was in like before October of last year. So kind of like after COVID stuff started happening. So there's like regional stuff based on that. And then you mentioned Garfield earlier. So he's focusing a lot on like zip code level stuff. I've been talking about kind of like state level stuff. He's identified where at the zip code, it's even more. So for me, I'm looking at aggregated
The processing power to do a zip code is pretty heavy. So for anyone to undertake that outside of a smaller setup with more cash on hand, it's quite difficult to scale something like that.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I have not done zip code, because for me, I have to think as like a software provider where like there has to be scale.
Well, you've got your subs, right? Your monthly subs. It's never going to get anywhere near it if you've got a lot of people tracking a lot of keywords going across all of those zip codes. The processing power is just, it's exponential. It's just too much to take on to cover a respectable monthly fee. You'd be out of business trying to cover it, because it's going to cost you, I don't know what your fees are, but maybe double, triple, quadruple the amount in terms to measure that to offset to the customer. So you're doing it on what's an aggregated level, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is because there's just so many zip codes. You essentially have to track every single zip code to find the best patterns. At some point, it becomes overkill. This is where it will be super interesting. I'm sure if you analyze all of the zip codes, the same thing that I'm doing at the state level, that there's going to be very even clearer patterns that relate to inventory, FBA or FBM, and then actual marketing effects on how your ranking is and how that correlates to sales. But that's just like, it's so much data and so much like actually processing power. So like taking a step back at the state level, even a lot of sellers like think the state level is overkill, right? Like still a lot of people aren't convinced that the amount of inventory in certain regions is going to affect your like regional rank or your regional sales, because when you think if you're like in stock or not is just one number, but your individual warehouses vary quite a bit. So it starts getting into the regional value.
Do you map that though with an API though? Do you map all in terms of the zip codes by state? Do you overlay that with facility centers as well? And like, can you get that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether you can get that kind of data on an individualized level. You'll know where the FBA centers are, but tying that in with products at these centers.
Yeah, we can. We're not doing the zip code part, but all of the other stuff, and this is something that we haven't rolled out these features because the analyses, they get so unique to each seller where it's been hard to like find to like finish the analysis and aggregate it across all sellers. And this is the part where how does regional inventory at each warehouse relate to the rank, the fulfillment type, and then the actual sales. So even more important, right? Not just the rank, that's like the easiest part to measure, but then the sales and the inventory, that gets into like the Amazon seller like giving access, while for just keyword rank traffic.
And plus there's the delay time and any downtime with the core and the API as well, isn't it? So that can throw things out.
Yeah, and like the other problem is knowing that when you have inventory at a warehouse, it could be a fake metric, because did it just arrive or is it like getting sold? So like that, you have to measure the flux of inventory at an individual
and movement.
Yeah, the movement of it, not just what is the snapshot of the inventory. So that's the other part where it has to get into patterns of what it's happening. And there's so many like anecdotal stories and data patterns when you're looking at individual brands where like somebody receives inventory and their sales start increasing, and not just from out of stock to in stock, but they were in stock and they got more inventory and their sales increased just because of more inventory. It's obvious. It's because Amazon then takes your 1,000 units and adds a little bit more into the other 50 to 75 warehouses. So now you don't just have 1, 2, or 3 units in those. You're actually in more warehouses. So now you can outrank.
And if you're well stocked in one warehouse in a location that it sells well, there's probably a knock-on effect in terms of the algorithm realizing, well, there's plenty of stock to sell through here. So that obviously that would give a bit of parity there.
Yeah, exactly. And the opposite happens for some people. That's why it's like right. It's harder to kind of like to prove it, that it's like, yes, you just need to send more inventory. Or
a lot of this stuff we can't prove. A lot of the stuff that we do is observations, you measure, and then other people speak, and then you kind of weigh it up in between.
Yeah, it's brand specific, because some brands, their inventory is dominant to a certain region of the US, and that may be Amazon's fulfillment strategy decision, or just where your customers are buying more relative to other brands. So there's like these factors that that vary based on that. But there is one thing I want to get into Geo Rank, and actually you might have insights on this because I haven't like promoted this much yet. So I thought like you'd be perfect to have insight on this. So we started measuring Geo Rank, but for sponsored listings.
Mm-hmm.
So meaning that where your rank is, essentially it's just a sponsor, same as before, like organic, like everything was organic, just the regional rank. But now it's also for all the sponsored listings, which like it's obvious that, you know, like the more you're bidding, the more you're spending, your rank is kind of like artificial, that it's gonna like be like in the top 3, top 5, you know, like bottom 5, like in the 5 to 10, or then you're like way down in some later pages. So that rank is kind of like artificial based on how you're spending and what competitors are spending, compared to organic rank, which has a little bit more stability, because you can't, like, unless you like send an inventory or like you're out of stock. But the sponsored is, you can affect like that rank right away. So I think part of it is like it's potentially not as meaningful, because you can artificially change the sponsored position based on your advertising strategy. But this is the interesting part, and I'm curious what you think, is that, like, assuming there is stability, how, let's say for a particular product and keyword, that your competitors are like consistent advertising, you're consistent advertising, there's still fluctuations in the sponsored rank regionally. So to me, this could be a metric where, is it an opportunity for you to bid more or spend more depending on that fluctuation? So if you're having certain ACoS for one keyword compared to ACoS with another keyword, and you see that the rank variability is way higher for one of them, that means like in different states, Amazon may be like wasting your money or not, because that variability is higher. You're not consistently ranking in certain states. Is it because the customers like don't like you in a certain state more? But I feel like using the rank variability for sponsored Geo Rank could be some sort of signal to try to decide like which keywords do you focus on more of, like increasing the bid, or you're like happy with your ACoS, so there is more room to increase the bid or increase the budget. So variability may be some sort of measurement of if there is room to improve your metric or not. So what do you think about that? Kind of like how
there's a lot of variables, and don't forget things like campaign history, you know, like with all the stuff that's going on with everyone involved in terms of bidding, in terms of the sponsored results. Look at things like, I don't know, example, let's say you've got a seller that decides they want to migrate over to a software. So they have to start new campaigns. That's going to have impact on their current campaigns if they've got great campaign history. Depending on what we found at Datebrew is that depending on how well, like if you're in a high velocity category, so we're migrating campaigns over, right? You're in a high velocity category, and the campaign's got great history, performs well. Well, it takes a while for the impression share to go over to the new campaign. Now, if you've got a really shitty, poor converting campaign, you're better off starting a new campaign to give you on a better footing. You still may have a problem time to time with impression share and stuff. But the point I'm kind of making is so many different variables is really hard to pick out. I mean, wouldn't it be lovely if we could be able to target by state, for instance, and then work out exactly what we've got in terms of what's in the facility centers, so you are optimizing your advertising in the states where you've got the best conversion rates. I mean, that's a long way off, you know. Part and parcel of that, you can get some data out of AdWords, because that's the machine, the mechanics that people look at now with PPC platforms. You start off, like if you look at 2015 with Amazon, it was like Fisher Price. It was poor, wasn't it? And what you had was a micro amount of control over your campaigns, and then you'd work out all the kinks in the algorithm or what you can through observations and make adjustments according. Now, obviously, that's got a lot more smarter. They rolled it out a lot more larger suite of products and stuff. But yeah, there is just so many different variables. I don't know how you would go about tracking it and be confident in the results, other than gathering the data to see the data that you're confident in it. Does that make sense? But I'm trying to get my head around how many variables you're dealing with there to know whether there's that congruency there.
Yeah, the amount of variables is crazy. If we simplify it and know that Amazon has their own algorithm of regionally, how I'm kind of like now thinking from Amazon algorithm perspective that that regionally there's different customers, so Amazon is going to show your product in certain regions potentially ranked consistently higher and charging you more money compared to other regions where they're not showing you as high and not like bidding as high for you in certain regions, compared to, let's say, another keyword where they're just like ranking you different than the other pattern. So let's say like there's these two keywords and Amazon knows based on all of this history, everything you talk about, all of these factors, let's say Amazon accounts for all of them. And for one keyword, they're just gonna show you like more consistently, and another keyword less consistently, meaning like more variability. So I wonder, like, if at the minimum, if we simplify it, maybe it's too many assumptions, but we see that here's two keywords. One is always like their rank. Like if you're measuring just general rank and it's like fluctuating, let's say like a couple of spots, versus if you start measuring the geo rank of that spot, then it just fluctuates more, like from like 1 to like 20 compared to another keyword from like 1 to 3 all of the time. I think this means Amazon has less confidence in like the data where it's like 1 to 20, or there's more competitors there. So I think you would just have to, it would be a signal for you to like increase your bid in this keyword, not this keyword, and your actual like ACoS will like improve, or something will happen where like, or you'll have more revenue without sacrificing ACoS when you apply it to a keyword with certain variability. So it would definitely have to be hypothesis driven, where like, all right, let me test changing the bid or the budget.
But this is what I love about you, right? You and I don't mean this in a detrimental way to anyone else around us. Is like the way that you think on that level and the stuff that you do is quite advanced, right? It's quite way ahead. And we've had these discussions I've called before. Like, you might go and do 100 things and 99% of them don't work. So it's always worth trying, because things like Geo Rank and stuff comes to the surface is because of people like you, people like Evelyn, and other people in the industry are there trying to push the needle all the time, you know, and you keep banging away at the door, and every so often the door opens, but then there's the other 99% where the door don't. So it's all to play for. That's how stuff progresses. By you have to do these things, find out by mistake, have good frameworks in terms of testing and stuff.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, like when you had me on before the call, like I wasn't even thinking about the PPC part. Like
I know. Do you know what? It's gone off the rails. We've gone on the geeky, haven't we?
So kind of like you just have to like keep pushing, and exactly like through that failure, you just kind of like look at more data and get more ideas, and like always talking to sellers and agencies at different level of like beginner and advanced, and someone's like, oh yeah, you mentioned this thing where like not a lot of people responded, but it's exactly like what I've been doing or what I tested, or it worked and it didn't work. So it kind of gives me ideas where like, oh, actually now I need to track this at scale, because you know, like there's like anecdotal patterns or exceptions for every brand, but as soon as you see it across like 10 brands or 100 brands or more, that's when patterns start coming out. So I think that's the interesting part.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to cover before we go?
No, that's all I had for Geo Rank, Google Ads. Let me just come back to Facebook ads.
Yeah, we missed a bit on Facebook. Let's go back.
Yeah, just like full circle, because there's so much stuff happening, and essentially it's like more summarizing and then getting into the strategy where like you already know if you're like more on the beginner side or advanced side on Facebook ads. So what you have to do is within your strategy, you have to what I was saying earlier, but I want to add a few notes, is that segment how you're advertising and make sure that you're trying to like stitch your data together where hold on, I'm gonna take my thought for this. So this is where right now, like I have in mind the advertisers that they figure it out. These are the Amazon sellers where they went from $100 per day to $1,000 per day, or the ones that went from like $1,000 to $10,000 per day Facebook ads and more, and even more. So I'm thinking like, what did those do that the other like 70 to 90% that are like struggling, or they're just not scaling their ads. And it's this part is that like they test in a way where they have a system that they have some data and then they add on top of it. So this is as simple as like doing two things. Like you have something that's not necessarily working, but it's your baseline data. So whether you're beginner or advanced, have a strategy, add a second part. And this is where like your funnel starts expanding. Like you're running ads into your ManyChat flow, and then you're doing something like start adding a split test. It's going to add one more layer. So don't expect that that test is going to like save you and allow you to scale. It's just going to allow you to simplify that there's like 20 things you can test, 20 hypotheses or crazy things, or changing your funnel, or do you start doing email marketing on your ads? But like adding in that one layer where right now with all of the attribution issues, you have to start thinking, all right, how do I start tracking differently, or adding more data, stitching more data, where I might have to send an extra ad out or an email to ask customers about their Amazon experience, not in a way to like incentivize in a way or anything, but more about to improve your attribution, because you'll have a little bit extra touch point, and that may work better through email than through ManyChat. So kind of like add in another platform or method to diversify your attribution tracking to be able to improve your performance. This is like killing two birds with one stone for Amazon sellers, because you're diversifying the Amazon algorithm of what signal they're sensing. Like you're doing other things, and Amazon sees that it's not like manipulating for 99% of the traffic coming from mobile from a certain URL. You're diversifying for the Amazon ranking benefit. But on the strategy side, you're diversifying to overcome these attribution issues that are happening. And trust me, whatever Facebook figures out right now, there's going to be another curveball. Something else is going to happen, like in 3 months and 6 months, that is going to be like worse again, and it's going to be like better and worse. And advertisers are going to be like trying to figure out, softwares are going to come out to like have a workaround. But as the advertiser, you just have to like diversify your strategy to give you like another insight of data to like overcome that. So I just want to finish up summarizing that way.
No worries. That's good. Let's get you back on in a few weeks. It's always interesting having you on, because you have so much access to data to, even if we're just spitting hypotheses and stuff like that, it don't matter. It's interesting information, and it gets people to think about setting up their own tests to give them own ideas to go off and do stuff, because there isn't a fits all for everything. And it's like with conversion optimization, you can buy these things. It says, buy this funnel and it's guaranteed to work. It's horseshit. It's not guaranteed to work, because it's coming down to your product, the type of traffic you send, and everything else. So testing is really important. And if you can get into that framework and accept that you will fail 99 times on your test, but that one test is the one that is going to be the one that makes the difference. But it's about putting the grunt work in. What's the best way to reach it, Ev? Ev. Sorry.
Facebook group. So if you search for Zon Tracker or AMZ Jet, Facebook group should come up. So that's the best, or LinkedIn, or connect with me personally on Facebook.
Sounds good. Guys, I'll be back next week. Tomorrow, Sharon Evans back in the chair, roundtable, talking about the departure of Jeff Bezos. So make sure you tune in for that. Bella will be back Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll be back again. Next week, I'm setting up a roundtable, hopefully with the aggregators. So all the key aggregators that you've been hearing about in the space, reaching out to you to buy companies, etc. I want to get them all round the round table and try and work out who's different from each other, so you guys understand the differentiation points that these guys offer. And one of the plans I've planned to do is maybe a couple of weeks later is actually get a round table of lots of sellers who sold their businesses. And then we can add that post-sale conversation of dealing with aggregators as well, just to get more of a balanced view. Basically, it's time to sign off, I think. Yev, should we go?
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Take care, guys. Take care of yourself and your family. And yeah, I'll see you soon.